Peters all the way, playing proper football, the Sheffield United way. Ole, 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 ole.
Welcome to the Sheffield United Way. My name's Nick, and if you're an avid Twitter user, you will absolutely know the face that you're about to see in a second. From the Second Tier podcast, we welcome Derby fan and championship icon Ryan Dilks. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, thank you, Nick. I like championship icon. I'm going to put that on my CV. But yeah, I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, very good, thank you. The first thing that I want to say to you, this is going to sound really weird, but do you remember meeting me in person?
A long time ago, yeah, because this was when we just started the podcast. It was the very early days for us. It was at the which awards was it? The FCA's, was it?
Yeah. Right outside the toilets. I didn't want to say it because that would have sounded really weird. We met just outside the toilets, but I remember meeting you, at the FCA's. Me and Hal were there. That's actually when we won 2 awards back to back. It was our first awards, and we were like, I think people were booing us the second time because they're like, why are these guys winning everything? So
I was leading the boos, mate. I was at the back going, rubbish. I'm joking, of course. I love you guys.
No, it was a long time ago, and we've made many videos since then, and so have you. You've made lots of videos, you've made lots of content, but today we're going to be talking about Sheffield United. And the most interesting question out of everything that I'm going to ask you, for me, growing up, what did you think of Sheffield United? Because spoiler alert, you are a Derby County fan, and I know in relation to Sheffield, Derby's not that far away. So what were your thoughts on Sheffield United growing up?
I didn't have a strong opinion, to be honest. Of course, Derby have got plenty of rivals a lot closer to here, namely Forest, Leicester. So I always just, as a neutral, had a pretty indifferent opinion on Sheffield United, really. I mean, the first thoughts that always came to my head was the one season you had in the Premier League in the mid-2000s, and that team was a bit of a cult classic for me, with Morgan, Bromby, those kind of lads. And that was the first thing that always came to mind for me, and of course Warnock. So I didn't really have a strong opinion on Sheffield United. It was just that team that stuck mainly in my mind, and I've always had a bit of a soft spot for them. I think I managed them a couple of times in Football Manager back in the days when you had like Harry Maguire and you were lingering in League One for a fair while. The bad old days. Tell me about it. I've always had a bit of a soft spot for Sheffield United, but by and large, pretty indifferent. If you want me to be completely honest on it.
No, that's absolutely fine. Always be honest. Yeah, obviously not too far away, but we've got Yorkshire rivals. You've got rivals around you guys. I just always wonder that from an opposition fan, because sometimes they say something really, really random. Like I remember that goal that you scored against us, and just pick a random player out of the air, and it's like, wow, that you just never know what another fan's gonna think of Sheffield United.
Yeah, you've got me thinking now. Were there any memorable times when Derby and Sheffield United played each other? I'm not sure there was. Nothing stands out for me. I think there's been a lot of players who have gone between, obviously, Bramall Lane and Pride Park, a few managers as well, but I don't think we've actually played each other that often, which is a bit mad, really, isn't it, as you say? But probably won't be happening very often soon anyway, if this season's going to go the way it looks at the moment.
Maybe so. And you know what? You're an absolute pro, because that's a great segue into talking about how did you expect Sheffield United's season to go?
I think you know how I expected it to go, Nick.
That might be one of the reasons why I got you on this podcast.
Blades fans haven't let me forget our predictions at the start of the season, where I think we had Sheffield United finish 8th, was it? 8th or 9th? It was definitely outside the top 6.
I was more thinking about the Chris Wilder managerial ranking, to be honest.
Yeah, well, there's that as well, where we had Chris Wilder ranked as the 21st manager we would like in charge of our club. I mean, the reasons for that were pretty out there, really, because obviously Chris Wilder, up until this point, had a pretty miserable few years in his managerial career. Obviously, last season with Sheffield United, Watford before that went terribly. Middlesbrough was pretty underwhelming, and then obviously his final season at Sheffield United before that was a bit of a mess as well. And it looked like Chris Wilder had kind of just developed a reputation of just falling out with people, really, as opposed to being a good manager anymore. So that's why I was very skeptical about him being able to turn around what was such a big job at Sheffield United. Of course, loads of players who have been at the club for a long time going out the door, points deduction, the club looking to be taken over, and that's even before you get on to the fact of the matter of Sheffield United having one of the worst seasons a team's ever had in the Premier League. So there wasn't really much going in Sheffield United's favour, really. No. I think it's easy to say this in hindsight, but I actually would have put Sheffield United lower in our league table predictions if we were to do them like midway through the summer. But because I saw Sheffield United's business and I was looking at the likes of Harrison Burrows, Michael Cooper, and I was like, I'll tell you what, they are doing some pretty decent business, actually. So that was what pushed the Blades up a bit further. But even then, I just thought there's a lot going against them. So I didn't see it going anywhere near as well as it has done. So fair play to Chris Wilder. He has chucked egg all over my face, Nick.
And Justin's as well.
Justin's as well, yeah.
In all honesty, you're absolutely right, because the first two signings were very underwhelming because we got rid of kind of, John Egan, George Baldock, who's no longer with us, Ollie McBurney, all these big characters in the dressing room. And the first two signings were Jamie Shackleton and Sam McCallum. And don't get me wrong, Sam McCallum's been a great squad player for us this season up to now. But it doesn't inspire you with loads of confidence, really. And I can see why you said it. And I think a lot of Blades fans, even though it's nice to be like, you were wrong, we will have thought the exact same thing at that time. I actually, before we brought in all these great signings, I put us as third. And there's no way that if I was a Sheffield United fan, I would have put us as high as third, if I'm being completely honest. But no, we've had a fantastic start to the season. We are still only in February. We'll talk about the transfer window in just a few moments. But what do you think it is about Chris Wilder that Sheffield United is just the job for him? Because as you alluded to earlier, Middlesbrough, the first season was okay, just missed out on the playoffs, then horrendous second season. I'm not sure about that Watford job, because I don't think there's many managers that could have done much better than Wilder in that Watford job.
No, that's probably fair. But I think the phrase "he knows the club" does carry weight in certain cases. And when you've got Frank Lampard at Chelsea having a stinker, that has kind of muddied that thing. But I do think it is a genuine factor. And that has gone a long way into this season and him being able to turn things around. And I do think as well, he's been massively helped by the recruitment team playing an absolute blinder with the aforementioned signings and a few others as well. So it's all kind of just been a summer of revolution where they've just freshened things up, and Chris Wilder's managed to guide them on their way to this terrific season. And as I say, fair play to him for doing that.
We've also kept hold of some pretty good players as well. I think we all expected 𝗍𝗿𝗄𝗍 and 𝗍𝗍 Souza both to be sold. I think it's probably more the fact that the offers didn't come in that we expected. I think they probably would have been sold if they had have come in. But it seems like Chris Wilder absolutely fell in love with 𝗍𝗍 Souza. Absolutely loves him. He was really poor for us in the Premier League. I think 𝗍𝗍 Souza expected the Premier League to be a little bit easier. But it's great the fact that we've held on to them too. We've obviously held on to Gus Harmer, who is, everybody loves Gus Harmer in the Championship. He's just got that quality and that bite as well. People forget that he's a nasty little bugger as well. Even though he has a little cheeky grin on his face, but he is pretty nasty at times. But out of all the Sheffield United squad this season, who has surprised you, whether that be in a good way or a bad way?
You know what? I'll probably go Jack Robinson, because I thought after Harry Souttar got injured, I thought that would be a pretty devastating blow for Sheffield United, but I think he's actually done pretty well sliding in alongside 𝗬𝗿𝗲𝗵𝐻𝗄. And obviously when 𝗬𝗿𝗲𝗵𝗄 was missing, Robinson did a really, really solid job there as well, because I know everyone always thinks of him as a left back turned centre back, but he really is just a solid defender, isn't he? Who's just Mr. Reliable, gives you at bare minimum 6 out of 10 every game. And you can't really fault how he's done this season. He's done really, really well. So I'd probably go him. I think there isn't anyone else who's done surprisingly well or surprisingly badly for Sheffield United this season, in my eyes, unless I'm seriously forgetting someone. I think Callum O'Hare maybe has been a bit on the disappointing side. I thought that was going to be a really, really good move when that happened. I suppose 𝗤𝗄𝗎 actually is another one, someone who I think most people expected to be Sheffield United's main man this season, and just hasn't been really. I think Callum O'Hare, going back to him, it's just kind of been a bit frustrating at times. He's obviously shown moments of class, which is what Callum O'Hare has always done. But on plenty of occasions this season, I've looked at him and gone, he's still the Callum O'Hare who was at Coventry, frustrating Coventry fans for not having that end product. So those are the two who I'd probably pick out as maybe on the disappointing side. Jack Robinson's the one who has probably surprised me the most. I think 𝗬𝗏𝗏 as well, on the surprising side, has had a really, really good season as well. He's a player who I think looks really, really good. And Andre Brooks as well, since we're just reeling off players who have surprised me this season. So, I've gone from not having many in my mind to having loads. So
all of them, yeah. Now, do you know what? You've brought up a really, really good one in 𝗬𝗏𝗏, because it's his first season and he's been thrown in the deep end because of 𝗬𝗿𝗲𝗵𝗏's injury. Nobody saw that coming. Really, really unfortunate, because I think that 𝗬𝗿𝗲𝗵𝗏 was getting the attentions from a lot of Premier League clubs at the end of last season. Obviously, coming into the Premier League team that are doing really poorly, showing what he's got to offer. Chris Wilder giving him the armband as well at such a young age. I thought that was a crazy move, but it really kind of... Chris Wilder came in the first time, gave Billy Sharp the armband, obviously Sheffield lad, Sheffield United fan. He did it again with 𝗬𝗿𝗲𝗵𝗏. But 𝗬𝗏𝗏 has just come in there. Yes, he's made an odd error or two, but people forget how young he is and how inexperienced.
He's a young lad, isn't he?
Yeah.
That's going to happen when you're a young lad. You're going to make mistakes, and you've just got to ride the rough with the smooth with him. And if he keeps playing the way he has done this season, he's going to be a tremendous player.
Yeah, he really does give me the kind of like the 𝗍𝗍𝗍 feels, to be perfectly honest. I want to see him get forward a little bit more. I want to see him, I've seen a couple of shots from him from the edge of the box. I want to see goals from him, in all honesty. He's a bit too deep for me at the moment. He's picking the ball up from the defenders, the goalkeeper even at times. He's sometimes the furthest man back. So I want to see him a little bit further up the pitch, especially if he's playing with 𝗤𝗍𝗍 𝗚𝗿 or HAMZA CHOUDHURY. I want to see him, get up and down that field and support, Callum O'Hare, Gus Harmer, etc. But yeah, really, really good point about 𝗬𝗏𝗏. And I think that he really could have done with a League One loan this season if injuries wouldn't have happened, or if we'd have, brought in a few more central midfielders in the summer. And I think he would have excelled and had come back to Bramall Lane having made those mistakes in League One, in a League One loan, coming back full of confidence. I think it'd have been great. But saying that, he's been fantastic and we're second in the league. So, you can't really grumble at a young lad coming in. He's not even a Sheffield-born lad either. He's just come into it and been like, he's taken to the club like it's his own, and it's just wonderful to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
So before we talk about kind of signings in January, the reason why we've signed so many players in January is because the ownership has changed. Have you got any sort of thoughts on Prince Abdullah, what he's mistakes that he's made, things that he's done right? And do you think it was the right time for him to sell up?
I don't think it was the right time for him to sell up. I think the right time for him to sell up was at least 12 months ago, maybe a bit further on than that, because otherwise it would have probably saved Sheffield United from having as terrible a season as they had last season. Prince Abdullah, Marmite, isn't he? He's from a neutral perspective, I look at what he's done there, and he's not been the most erratic owner at championship level by any means, and seems to have, stayed loyal to the club when we've seen plenty of clubs at championship level not done that. And you've got to respect him for that. And by and large, Sheffield United have done pretty well in the time that he's been there. So you've got to say, by the standards of your average championship owner, he's done a pretty good job compared to other clubs. So I don't really have any strong feelings about the things that he's done wrong. As I say, he could have done with selling a bit sooner and maybe not selling to dubious parties. Obviously not the new owners. We're obviously referring to other people who may have had a look in over the past couple of years or so. But yeah, it's great to see that Sheffield United have now got that takeover done, because it's a fresh new era now, isn't it? And say that takeover didn't happen and we were heading into another Premier League season with Prince Abdullah, then I'd be fearful about another season like the last one happening all over again in the top flight if you guys did get promoted this season. So I'm glad it's happened. And yeah, they've shown a fair bit of ambition so far, these new owners, haven't they? Which is always good to see.
Yeah, exactly that. And we brought in 6 players. We had this planned in a week ago, but I wanted to delay it a little bit just to make sure we got all the signings in. And that was a really big mistake. And I'll tell you for why. Because we've signed 2 wingers from foreign leagues that I can't say either of those players' names. So let me run you through the rest of them, because I don't expect you to reel them off the top of your head. So I'll do it for you. Ben Brereton-Diaz, Tom Cannon, HAMZA Choudhury, Harry Clark, Rob Holding, and then the aforementioned wingers.
Rob Holding doesn't sound very hard to say.
So let's start with Ben Brereton-Diaz. What do you reckon to that signing? Because he's clearly been there and done that last season in a higher division. What do you think to that signing? Is that a promotion-winning signing for you?
Yeah, I would say so. He obviously did really well for Sheffield United last season in what was clearly a struggling team. So getting a player like that back is always a big boost. Someone who knows the club, again, I think does play a factor here. And last time he was in the Championship with Blackburn, he was scoring goals for fun, wasn't he? So I think it's a really solid move. The glaring area where Sheffield United, or one of the glaring areas where Sheffield United needed to strengthen, was that left wing position, because I love Gus Farmer. I would love to see him playing more down the middle. Having him on the left wing feels like you're not getting the best out of him for me. So having Brereton-Diaz on that left wing will hopefully mean Gus Farmer goes back into the middle. So yeah, you can't really fault Brereton-Diaz for how big a lad he is and how quick he is. He could tear defenders a new one. So hopefully we do start to see him get back that form that we saw before last season and when he was with Blackburn before.
Yeah, absolutely. And because you're the Championship Oracle, I'm going to run through these signings with you, because most of them are Championship players who have played a lot of games in the Championship. So Tom Cannon's another one that's obviously, he's not played shed tons of games, but he's scored quite a few goals this season for Stoke, and he scored a few goals for Preston as well. And obviously he's been there with Leicester recently. So what do you think to that signing? Obviously £10 million is a hell of a lot to pay for a player in the Championship.
Yeah, it's a hell of a lot of money, it's got to be said, and it's a lot of money for someone who's not actually played that many games in their career. I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but it's not that many for how big a fee it is. But look, I'll say this. You think, as someone who sees what every single fan of their club wants heading into a January window, every club wants a striker, pretty much. So they're very hard to find ones who actually know where the back of the net is. And Tom Cannon knows where the back of the net is. Yeah. You know, he scored 9 goals for Stoke this season, which might not blow people away. But you've got to remember that was in a Stoke side who are the lowest scorers in the league. I think he scored more than a third of their goals this season. So when you put it like that, he's had a really, really good season so far. And Sheffield United getting him for 10 million, a lot of money, but he's also only 22 years old. Yeah. So there's going to be some sell-on value down the line. And look, £10 million is a drop in the ocean if it means he fires Sheffield United to the Premier League, because as we were talking about earlier, 𝗍𝗲𝗴 hasn't exactly been setting the world alight so far this season. Tyrese Campbell, injury problems, Ryan Brewster, injury problems. So you need someone like Tom Cannon who's going to lead that line and hopefully score a fair few goals along the way. So yeah, it may be a lot, but I think it's worth it.
Yeah, I agree too. I agree too. But we need to get the balls in the right place for him to score those goals. I think 𝗬𝗏 Campbell, as you said, obviously injury problems this season, but he'd really hit a purple patch at the
Yeah.
time when he got injured. Really, really sad. And I think a lot of Blades fans are actually kind of putting him in front of Tom Cannon because even coming back from injury, he's making those runs, the runs that we've not been used to seeing from Rhian Brewster, from 𝗣𝗏𝗴, even Ryan O'Neill, young lad from Scotland, that he's inexperienced. Like, you can't expect him to be doing the job of an experienced striker like a 𝗬𝗏 Campbell or a Tom Cannon. So I'm expecting big things from Tom Cannon. Obviously, we've signed him for a lot of money, so Chris Wilder's put a lot of stock in him, and he's our player, which is the best thing because we've signed so many loan players this season. It's nice to see us put our money where our mouth is and really buy a quality striker for a bit of money. And we'll move on to talking about those loan signings now. HAMZA CHOUDHURY. Leicester fans aren't too enamoured with HAMZA CHOUDHURY, and I don't know whether that's because Leicester are used to, well, let's be honest, they won the Premier League not too long ago. So if they're looking at N'Golo Kante and thinking HAMZA CHOUDHURY is not quite as good as him, then I get it. But I'm a big fan of HAMZA CHOUDHURY. I'm not sure about you.
I think he could be Sheffield United's most underrated signing of the window. I think he is just a solid player. I don't get what Leicester fans are saying. You're probably right about the comparisons to, the players that they've had in previous years. Maybe their standards are a bit warped to what they should be expecting. But look, he was playing regularly in a Leicester side last season who walked the league. He was asked to play at right back a few times, did have a few shaky games. But ultimately, he's a really solid player. If you look at the underlying data from the season he had at Watford a couple of seasons ago, he was one of the best in the division at holding midfield roles. So, look, with Sheffield United, it's a signing that Sheffield United probably wouldn't have needed to make 2 or 3 months ago with the players that they've got, because obviously the injuries. It means that someone like HAMZA CHOUDHURY's got to come in, and I think he's a proper solid holding midfielder. So yeah, I think that's a really good signing. May go under the radar, may not grab the headlines, but I think that's a proper solid move.
Yeah, me too. Completely agree. Big fan of him. So moving on to Harry Clarke, obviously we got him from Ipswich. He's going to be filling that right back spot and that centre back spot. I think it will be predominantly that right back spot, with 𝗤𝗏𝗍𝐿𝐻RIST having a few wobbly games recently. May go back to Chelsea, but having made all these loan signings, we've now exceeded how many loan signings we could have in a squad, or in the match day squad, should I say. So we've got 6 loan signings. We're only allowed 5. That might mean that Harry Clarke coming in means that 𝗤𝗏𝗍𝐿𝐻RIST steps out. Do you think that Harry Clarke is good enough to help us gain promotion?
I'm not sure. This is the one. This is the one signing. Actually, maybe the next one we'll talk about as well. But this signing in particular is one which I'm not too sure about, because Harry Clarke was very in and out of Ipswich's team last season. It was between him and Axel Tuanzebe for that right back slot. Axel Tuanzebe, who's predominantly a centre back, but shifted out onto the right in that side last season. And it's always quite difficult to tell with Ipswich players, because with Kieran McKenna being a tremendous manager, he gets players playing above the level that they're actually at. Yeah. And I think Harry Clarke was one of those players who really benefited from having Kieran McKenna as their manager. I mean, he's a solid right back. He's great defensively, doesn't offer a whole lot going forwards. And if he were to go to a side outside of the top 6 right now, I wouldn't really bat much of an eyelid. So him going to a team fighting for the top 2 doesn't take me aback, I've got to say. So, I mean, by all means, prove me wrong. I think 𝗤𝗏𝗍𝐿𝐻RIST has done pretty well this season, has had a few shaky games recently, but by and large, I think he's been okay. I don't think Harry Clarke is a massive upgrade on that. And considering Sheffield United have been quite clearly trying to find a right back in the January window, with John Joe Kenny being linked, Harry Clarke's, he's okay. I'm not amazed by it, put it that way.
Do you think John Joe Kenny would have been a much, much, much better signing than Harry Clark?
I won't go as far to say much, much, much better,
I put
but
too many muches in there, didn't I?
would he have been better? Maybe. I mean, he's playing in the German second tier, so I don't really know. I'm not seeing him week in, week out. Again, I think that would probably be in the same category of Harry Clark, really. But it is clear that Wilder wants someone who's not necessarily going to be bombing it down the wing like Jayden Bogle perhaps would if he was still at Sheffield United this season. He just wants someone who's going to be your steady right back. And if he wants that, then Harry Clark is fine, I guess.
To be perfectly honest, Hal interviewed Benjamin Bloom on this channel a few days ago, and Benjamin Bloom was absolutely besotted with Harry Clark. Obviously, he's a local lad, so you always have more of an affinity to a local lad. To me, listening to what Benjamin Bloom said, it feels like he's a bit of a Chris Wilder player, and that's the only thing that I'm holding on to. I've not seen enough of Harry Clark. And we'll finally move on to Rob Holding. And I don't know what to make of this signing, to be perfectly honest. He's been there, done that. He's played quite a bit of Premier League football, in all honesty, but he's had a lot of injuries as of late. He's not been playing football for Palace. Again, he looks like he could be a Chris Wilder sign. Looks like he's someone good in the dressing room. His hairline's grown back as well, which is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
I need to know where he's gone for that because I need to book myself in. But no, what do you think? Do you think he's going to offer much more than Jack Robinson to the Sheffield United team?
It's really, really hard to say because he's played one game in the last 18 months or something like that. It's unbelievable, isn't it, how little he's played, and considering we're talking about a guy here who was playing fairly infrequently for Arsenal not too long ago. It's pretty mad that he's at this stage in his career now, and he's still only 29, which really caught me by surprise. Yeah, considering the two players who Sheffield United were being heavily linked with on deadline day were Japhet Tanganga at Millwall and Jimmy Dunn at QPR. To find that Sheffield United have ended up with Rob Holding is a bit underwhelming. And I think Tanganga was always a bit out of the price range because £12 million, he's a really, really good defender, but I wouldn't be paying that much for him. Considering I saw reports saying Jimmy Dunn was available for £3 million, I would have definitely taken that. Yes, he's out of contract in the summer, but I think if it's a matter of Jimmy Dunn helping Sheffield United significantly towards promotion, I think it's a risk worth taking.
Yeah,
Rob Holding is a lad here who's not played much football over the past 18 months. We don't know what stage he's like at this point in his career anymore. So it seems like, I don't know, it seems like it's just a roll of the dice to see what outcome we get. I think Jack Robinson, to be fair to him, has done really, really well in the last few weeks. So whether if he gets shifted out of the team for Rob Holding, then I'll be surprised. But look, maybe I'll be completely wrong and Rob Holding would be class. But yeah, I mean, he was being linked with Coventry earlier in the window. And even then I was a bit like, okay. So again, for him to go to Sheffield United, it's a bit underwhelming to say the least. But hey, prove me wrong, Rob Holding. Roll back the years and show us the Rob Holding of old.
I don't even remember the Rob Holding of old. I don't remember him being this incredible player, but we'll have to wait and see, won't we? I'm sure.
He did play 30 games in the Premier League for Arsenal, literally 4 seasons ago, I think it was, which seems mad.
I'm not going to throw you under the bus and ask you about Jefferson Cathares, I think he's called. And
are you sure?
There's a Nigerian winger in there as well that I'm not even going to attempt and butcher his name. So we're not going to speak about those. But what I'm going to ask you is, what do you reckon to this transfer window for the Blades then? Because we've spoken about all those players over the whole. I'll give you my opinion and then you give me your opinion if that's okay. So I think the reason why we brought in so many players is to backfill what we should have done in the summer. Prince Abdullah didn't have the funds, in my opinion, to bring in as many players as what we should have brought in, because I think it was like 13 players that we got rid of in the summer. And we've been really on a threadbare squad, skeleton squad in the last few months. So I think that's the reason why we brought so many players in. Do you think the players are good enough to get us over the line?
I think, look, Sheffield United have found themselves in a position which maybe even many at the club weren't expecting to find themselves in, where there's a genuinely very good chance of automatic promotion, when I think many would have happily just taken a playoff place this season. So, look, it's been fantastic up to this point. I think most of the signings Sheffield United have made have been absolutely spot on. You mentioned Diaz, Cannon, hopefully give the Blades a bit more firepower, which they were lacking earlier on in the season. I think Choudhury is just a really, really solid midfield option to bring in, considering the injury problems that you guys have had. Harry Clark, Rob Holding.
It feels like we've gone really, really strong early on. And then towards the end of the window, it's like we're scrapping around for players. And we've, like you said, we've tried to get Tanganga. We've tried to get Jimmy done as well. It's not quite worked out. Maybe we've blown all the cash on someone like Tom Cannon. We've blown a lot of the wages on Brereton Diaz and HAMZA Choudhury. And maybe we've just tried to, shore it up, make sure we've got enough bodies in different positions. And maybe it does feel like Holding and Clark are squad players that are going to, I always liken this to when we got promoted, when we came second to Norwich in, I think it was 18-19, when we signed players like Martin Craner. He was never going to be a starter that's going to play every single minute of every game, but he's going to fill in at right back. He's going to fill in different positions, and he's going to do 6, 7 out of 10 every week. So I feel like maybe we've brought in a few players like that are going to give you, an average rating every week. They're going to put everything in, leave it all out there on the pitch. And maybe it's just players that Chris Wilder feels like he can trust.
Yeah, you're probably spot on. I think it does feel a bit like, Sheffield United have gone flying into a shop on Black Friday and they've gone for all the big bargains. And then they've been like, oh, wait, we really needed a new TV or something like that. And they've looked at what's left and they've gone, oh, okay, that's going to have to do, I guess. That's probably a bit disrespectful to Clark and Holding, but maybe you are right. Maybe they're just there to just be squad players. But ultimately, I think if you started this window and looked at what Sheffield United need to strengthen, I think left winger, striker were the two priorities. Centre mids to just kind of shore up that position as well. And then a right back and centre back would have been great. It's not the end of the world if we didn't, massively strengthen in that area. So now that we've got to this stage and we've seen the players that we've got a player in each of those positions. That's great. So overall, considering how it started, I would say Sheffield United have probably had one of the best windows. Maybe not the best, but I would certainly put it in top 5, I think. Just because I think Diaz, Cannon, two of the standout signings the whole window. Choudhury's a really underrated one, and Clark and Holding we've spoken about already. So it's been a really, really positive one, I would say, for Sheffield United.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I think this brings us on to the most important question, and I think you expect it to come at some point. Who are your top 2 for this season?
I can tell you who I think is going to finish top. I think Leeds are going to be pretty comfortably the title winners come the end of the season. It's a shame, and I'm not saying it's a shame because I think Leeds are going to win. It's a shame because it has, for a lot of this season, looked like it was going to be a genuine, top 4 race out of those 4 teams, and either of them or any of them could have won the title. But I think it probably will be Leeds. I think the fact that they've got to this stage in the season, top of the table, having not really broken a sweat so far, I think is a sign that they're just much stronger than the other teams. And that's fine. They were the title favourites at the start of the season for a reason. and they probably will go on their merry way now to winning the league and getting promoted. Who finishes second, though? I honestly am not sure right now. I think it is so tight to call, and I don't want to give you a cop-out answer, so I'll talk you through my thinking. I think, for me, I'm still very unconvinced about Burnley because they were obviously a bit boring and have looked on so many occasions pretty unconvincing. It's strange because they seem to be more convincing when they're playing against a team at a similar level to them, but then they struggle against the teams who are much lower down the table. So I think they will drop enough points over the course of the season to finish outside of the top two. Sheffield United, up until a few weeks ago, I would have said are my team who I think are going to finish second. The last handful of games have made me start to question, are they running out of steam a little bit? As someone who saw them against Derby in the flesh, I was very unimpressed in that game. And of course, the 3-0 thrashing at Hull against Hull we won't talk about. So, yeah, that's maybe a bit concerned at the moment, but considering the only other candidate therefore is Sunderland, a side who are very inexperienced, they've been playing pretty much the same players all season, and they need to have a rest at some point. That may be something that holds them back. But then you look at the likes of 𝗍𝗲𝗍𝗶 coming in. He looks an unbelievable player based off that Middlesbrough game last time out, so that could give them a bit more impetus to really take it all the way and maybe surprise everyone. And kind of like, you remember Ipswich last season in the Championship, everyone was looking at them thinking they're going to fall away at some point. And many people probably thought the same with Sunderland. Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll stick around. So I'd say Leeds top, and then it's between Sheffield United and Sunderland for second place for me.
So you're completely writing Burnley off then?
I wouldn't completely write them off, but I'd say those two are much more likely for me.
I didn't expect you to say that. I thought you were going to go Burnley. I really did.
No. I've never been the biggest fan of Scott Parker, and nothing this season has really changed that. They're great defensively, but as I say, they find it so difficult breaking down teams that they should be beating that I just can't convincingly put any money on them. So it's between Sheffield United and Sunderland for me. Burnley will probably be in the conversation right until the end of the season, but I'd be surprised if they topped those two.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I don't think you sat on the fence there at all. I think you gave a comprehensive answer, and I'm glad you didn't say Burnley. So thank you very much for that. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me as well today, Ryan. If people have been living under a rock, where can they find you, and what is the Second Tier podcast?
The Second Tier podcast is the place to be for Championship football. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere where you get your podcasts, really. But we're also on YouTube now. We have really been going hard on YouTube this season. It seems to be paying off. So if you want to subscribe to the Second Tier YouTube channel, please do. We put out a lot of content on there. So if you're just a Sheffield United fan or a general Championship fan, then make sure you get involved, and hopefully we'll see you along the way.
Yeah, the whole point of having you on this channel is to get an unbiased opinion on Sheffield United. And that's what you do for every Championship club.
Despite what people say on Twitter, Nick.
Absolutely. We love those clips. We love them. Keep them coming, Ryan. Keep them coming.
We will do, no matter what people say.
Good stuff. Thanks for joining me today, Ryan.
Nice one. Cheers, Nick, mate.
𝗚𝗿𝗲𝗍𝗶𝗹𝗶